Yo, 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 what is up? It is Tuesday night. You know what it is. It's your boys with Flyers Talk A to D tonight. Live reacting to the final home game against the Columbus Blue Jackets, where there are playoff implications on the line for Columbus, believe it or not. We're also going to talk about some things going on in the Flyers. Report from Anthony Sanfilippo of Snow the Goalie podcast about Alexei Kolosov. You're going to want to catch that on the second half of the show. First half of the show, this scorching offense. I know we're not really seeing it tonight, at least on the scorecard. Not a lot of finish from the Flyers, but like I said, we're going to live react to the game. We're going to talk about this hot offense and what has happened in the last couple of weeks for the Flyers. And we're going to talk Alexei Kolosov. What's going on with that? Hit that like, hit that subscribe. Time to talk some puck. Let's get at it. What's up, everybody? Like I said, it is Tuesday night. It is Flyers Talk A to D. Welcome to the program. Dales, we got Pove. We got Brad underneath. No Matty again this week. Matty a little busy with some stuff he's got going on in his other, well, yeah, let's just call it his other life. A lot going on there. Lot to talk about in Flyers land tonight. Right now, 2-0. About 14 and a half minutes remaining in the third period here. Playoff implications for Columbus. Can the Flyers play spoiler to another team here tonight? That's going to be the question here as we live react. Like I said, we're going to talk Brad Shaw, this hot offense. We're going to talk Alexei Kolosov. There's some other topics I'm sure you guys are going to want to talk about. So hit that like, hit that subscribe wherever you are watching. And if you can't catch us live, make sure you catch us on Apple, Spotify, Spreaker, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts. Any other ways you can't catch us live, you can catch us as we are pre-recorded as well. So, boys, what's going on? How we feeling tonight?
I'm encouraged by this offense. I think it's leaving a really good taste in the mouths of the players, the fans, the whole organization leading into the offseason.
Got to tell you, I'm very impressed with Foerster. I like him. He has a blue dart for a wrist shot, man. That man can shoot the puck.
Absolutely, absolutely. As always, we are brought to you by Specialized Physical Therapy. Head on over to specializedphysicaltherapy.com. Go check out Dr. Paul Vidal. He's got 2 locations, one in Burlington and one in Cherry Hill. You having any kind of aches, pains, anything like that, go ahead, check him out. Specializedphysicaltherapy.com. Dr. Paul Vidal. He's our doc. Make him yours. All right, boys. Tonight we got the face-off question. What's up to the fam out there in the chat? I can see most of you guys in there. I see Priz, Benny. What's going on, fellas? So tonight, with 2 games left in the regular season, Bradshaw has the Flyers offense trending in the right direction heading into next season. Agree or disagree? Brad, I'm going to let you go first this week.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I mean, obviously, I watched my team give up 8 goals to your team, so they're putting the puck in the net, and they look pretty impressive. And as I said before, Mr. Foerster, he's got one hell of a wrist shot. I mean, that man needs to shoot and shoot often. And I think going into next year, I'm pretty sure that the Flyers coach, whomever it is, whether it's Shaw or anybody else, will make sure that he is shooting the puck. I mean, if I'm doing a power play, I'm setting him up in the Ovechkin office, and I'm wanting him to shoot the puck because that guy can just really let it fly. I mean, they're looking better on the power play. You know, I think Tortorella leaving is probably a weight off their shoulders. I think they just seem to, you know, I think it just got too much with him. You know, he does have that effect on some people. He's had that effect on players all the time, and you know, for whatever reason, he wore out his welcome, and I guess the guys were just too uptight playing for him. You know, and Shaw is bringing in a relaxed attitude, and they look like they're having fun out there, and hopefully they will they'll take that same attitude next season and have some fun and score a lot of goals. Just, at this point, maybe try to tighten up the D a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this whole system right now that they're playing is kind of modeled after what John Tortorella does. I just don't think Bradshaw's been the type of coach that he's going to be as intimidating, for lack of a better word, for the expectations of this team. I think we know what the expectations could have been, should have been. Obviously, this season has kind of, for some fans, had turned into a little bit of a disappointment. But this is a team that's rebuilding. A lot of people still think there's about 3 to 5 years left in this rebuild. I'm one of those people that will strongly disagree, because we're seeing, because you brought up a perfect name there, Brad, Tyson Foerster. This is a guy we expected to take another step forward this year. He had a rough first half. He's really come on in the last couple of weeks for the Flyers. We got to continue to let some of these guys grow. Robbie, before we answer the poll question, we saw a couple moves today. They're going out and they're grabbing guys, like they're signing Alex Bump now that the collegiate season's done. They signed another kid. What was his name? Dennis Kaplan. I'm not exactly sure who the kid is, but signed him out of college as well. So obviously the youth movement is here, and they're trying to implement a lot of these younger players moving forward.
Yeah, no, certainly at this point in the season, you're taking care of some housekeeping. You're locking in some of those lower tier players to their ELCs, right? And really it spells that, you could expect more of the veteran presence on this team to be shed to give opportunities to players that are higher up on the food chain, like Denver Barkey, Oliver Bonk, Jet Lachenko, right? And to really maximize on what was achieved this season on the current big squad with players like Noah Cates. How could you say he's not the most improved player on this team, now reaching 100 points in his NHL career? Congrats to him. Great season. Good thing to build upon, as well as Tyson Foerster, Bobby Brink, and some, players to be determined, right? Like Jamie Drysdale had a nice, healthy season, right? Can he continue to up his development, right? Peltier coming in, right? He's fit in well, but, will that, continue? Will he be someone that this team can rely upon long term? The proof is in the pudding, boys. Pulling it back to the poll, right? 7 games since Bradshaw has taken over. And if you say Bradshaw's name really fast, it kind of sounds like Bradshaw from the APA. You ever notice that? But 32 goals in 7 games speaks volumes, right? So this is, as I said before, it's a good taste leading into the offseason. Kudos to Bradshaw, right? Because that's really been his goal, right? Is to take an ugly situation, taking a team that is now under or removed from that weight that you spoke of, Brad, from John Tortorella, right? And ready to take that next step. Tortorella came in. He accomplished what needed to be done here. He got the ship pointed back on the right. Now it's time to take it to the next level, boys.
No, absolutely. And the best way to take it to the next level is sometimes making that change. And we've seen a lot of positivity come out of this. And to Benny's point in this comment here, some similarities, but it looks like Shaw gives them a little bit more freedom on the ice, which I think has been really a game changer for not just, the morale of this team. No, more so the morale of the team, more than anything, they have the freedom to do what they need to do on the ice. You don't have to worry about pissing the coach off because they want to get a little fancy or they want to get, they wind up in the wrong position. This is the type of, I know people want to see this team tank, but it's not going to happen. I mean, obviously it's happening, but tanking does nothing in the NHL anymore while the draft lottery is still a thing.
5-1-1 in these 7 games, Brian. That's not tanking exactly, but they will fall in that top 5. when it comes to the draft lottery. So you've already achieved what you want. I still think, all right, you compare it to other teams that also began to rebuild around the same time. I think of the Chicago Blackhawks. Are we not further along than the Chicago Blackhawks at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, but the thing too to remember is we know San Jose is not going to get the first overall pick. It's probably going to unfortunately wind up being Chicago because the original 6 teams get the world. Think about it this way.
I was thinking it might go to Anaheim this time.
Anaheim's too far up in the standings.
Oh, yeah, you are. I forgot. You guys have been pretty good this year, actually.
We got a chance for 500 hockey for the first time in Lord knows how long. I'll take the win. What's up, Swoop? So the last time the Flyers, well, I would say the last couple of times the Flyers have had a top 3 pick, to an extent they haven't worked out. I mean, JVR had a pretty solid career here as a Flyer before getting traded to Toronto. I mean, Nolan Patrick was kind of. I don't want to necessarily say he was a bust, but he became very injury plagued and having a lot of migraine issues. So he never really turned into the player that anybody thought he would, which is very unfortunate. But you never know what you're getting. If we go back and look at that draft class, if you look at everybody picked after Nolan Patrick, they're all franchise players or close to franchise players. You never know what you're going to get in the draft. Flyers could get the number 1 overall pick. Who's to say Matt Schaefer is the guy? Who's to say James Higgins is the guy? You know what I mean?
It's all speculative at this point. But Brian, it's not about who you can necessarily get in the draft. It's about the draft capital. And that's all Danny Briere talks about is building draft capital that you can pair up in trading, right? Or more importantly, make offer sheets on RFAs like we talked about last week. Yeah. And maybe a team might not be willing to match it, not because they don't want to keep the player, but because that compensatory draft pick is kind of juicier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, Priz says it here. Offer sheet Rossi.
Right. Boom.
I mean, he's not like my prime target as an RFA only because of his size. His productivity is a whole nother story. I love Marco Rossi. I think he's going to be a dynamic player. But if I'm looking for a center right now, I'm looking for a big-bodied center. And unfortunately, I hate to say it because it is what it is. If I'm Danny Briere, I'm going to see if I can work out something for Mason McTavish.
Mm-hmm.
Proven leader.
Yes.
Very good big-bodied center. Wins faceoffs all the time. Good leader in the locker room. He's a good team guy. I don't want to leave Anaheim, but it is what it is. If it happens, it happens. But
he stays in your family.
Yeah.
He just goes from one coast to the other.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where it's just.
Yeah, but Anaheim has plenty of cap space. They can keep him if they want to.
Yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily a question of whether or not they want to keep him or afford or can afford it.
I mean, that you have to remember all these offer sheets, teams have a right to match.
Yeah. They have a week.
Yeah. And generally speaking, because they have a week, if they really want to keep somebody else is going to get traded so they can keep the guy. That's just kind of how things get done. That's why it's so hard to sign somebody to an offer sheet and be able to actually get him. It's not. It doesn't happen very often that it actually works. And stay away from Will Cooley. Do not touch him.
I mean,
we're not letting him go, especially to you guys.
The RFA situation is always tough because the compensation is going to be dependent on what the player made the last year. So if there's a player that's an RFA that made, I think it's anywhere between $11 to $17 million as a salary cap hit, you got to give up your next 4 first round draft picks, something along those lines. I mean, obviously there's nobody in the RFA class that's made that much, but just as an example, it's a kind of a difficult situation, but the RFA class is better than the UFA class. I mean, if I'm Danny Briere, which Flyers are, About a minute left on the power play. Still 2-0. About 8-10 left. Brink rushing up with it. And then goes to pass across to Konechny, but gets tipped out of the zone. If I'm Briere, I'm going to explore the RFA pool. I'm going to wait until next year and see what the UFA draft class is or free agency class is going to look like. There's just nobody, in my opinion, that's going to really fill a hole that they have right now. Except, and we talked about, I think it was last week or the week before, is Aaron Ekblad is the only guy I would consider in the UFA class this year. He's the only one.
Agreed.
You get a dynamic defenseman who's a leader, who can help some of these guys take a next step forward. Do I see him leaving Florida? No, probably not. But he'd be the only guy I'd look at UFA wise. Otherwise, I'm going to plug holes with guys like Bonk. Give him an opportunity to play. Some of these young guys are getting the opportunity to play here, Robbie, and they're really starting to show what they're made of.
Right. And also give it a little more freedom under Brad Shaw too, right? I've really seen in terms of a guy playing freer on the ice in Cam York. I think he was a guy that was being held underneath the thumbtack. And, it's really seemed like both offensively and defensively, like he's really unlocked the secret to this offense. And I know I said last week that I don't really like his chances for staying on as full-time head coach for the Flyers, but he's starting to really build a case for himself. 3-0 Columbus.
3-0 Columbus. I didn't see who scored. I just kind of looked up and it was already done. It looks like it was Adam Fantilli.
I never want to root against the Flyers and you never want to root for them to lose, but per our previous conversation, not the worst thing in the world.
I'm kind of pulling for Columbus, just because,
Columbus to make it.
Because their fans had just such a
right.
Such a
I'm going right with
break.
you.
And
not only that, the tragedy, but they had that strong middle part of the season where they just shot up the standings and they fell from that perch, not due to poor play, but due to injury. So it was like a real shame that you want to see that story come to fruition, Brad. I'm right with you.
Fortuita's bounce led to that goal for Fantilli, by the way.
The Canadiens have to play the Hurricanes. And of all teams to have to play in a must-win game, the Hurricanes are a great defensive team. And, boy, they may be gripping those sticks a little tight going up against that Hurricane defense. It's going to be tough. If Columbus can pull out that last game, will not be easy.
I mean, they'll probably rest a handful of their starters like some of these other teams have been doing since they've already clinched.
Yeah, probably. But and listen, they don't owe anybody anything. So Carolina, so they're going to do what they want to do. But nonetheless, it seems like whoever plays in that system is they're tough to score against. It just seems that way. It's like whoever they plug in seems to know it, to have a really good two-way game.
Yeah, and I wouldn't sleep on Montreal's offense either. Their offense has been sneaky good for the majority of the season, and now you got Ivan Demidov in the mix, who's got 2 points in basically his first 20 minutes of his career. He's going to be an absolute spark for that offense to get going too.
That goal, though, the Blackhawks should be ashamed of themselves with that goal. I mean, I forgot who it was. Somebody dumped it in, and then they were kind of just like lollygagging after the puck. Going after the puck, and then Demidov came in like a streaking like a bullet coming out of a gun, grabbing the puck and then going in front and making that move. Boy, oh boy! I mean, you can't not hustle like that. That was bad. That was bad. No, that's the kind of crap the Rangers have been doing this year, which got them knocked out of the playoffs. And when you see another team do it, it's like, aha! And this isn't just one team that does it. There's a lot of teams, and that you don't make the playoffs doing that. That's for darn sure.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed about this game tonight, boys, is, and we briefly talked about it off the air while we were waiting to come on. Flyers tonight, not for a lack of effort. They had a ton of good scoring chances tonight. I think they just ran into some really hot goaltending. Hit a couple posts, got some bounces to not go their way. I mean, this shutout doesn't necessarily tell you a lot about the story of this game. I mean, they had opportunity after opportunity. For the longest time in this game, it kind of even started off this way, going both ways for Columbus as well, whereas you just couldn't get the bounce to go your way. And now, unfortunately, if you see the replay of this Adam Fantilli goal, where it goes off the toe cap of his skate, and Columbus is starting to get some of the bounces. The Flyers aren't. They've hit some posts where they've been able to maintain possession of the puck, but Columbus goaltender's right there. But we'll see if they can at least eliminate the shootout here in the final. I think it was like 4 minutes and 48 seconds left in the game before they went to the commercial. But Priz chiming in as always, saying, but I was hyped for Demidov goal. Kid will be a monster. Yeah, kid will be a monster. It's definitely not a question of that. It's just, if Carolina's going to have their hands full, especially since there's really no tape on this kid, so you don't really know how to defend him yet. So there's that.
Well, we know he can skate like the wind, so they better be prepared for that.
Yeah, a lot of playoff implications tonight too, boys, as we're looking throughout the league. Anaheim and Minnesota tied up at 1. Minnesota in playoff position, needing a win there. I know the Flames are playing a little bit later on. Blues, who need a win, are winning right now 4-1 against the Utah Hockey Club.
That's another good story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they really turned it around.
Yeah.
Actually, Flames just got underway. Flames are about a little more than midway through the first period, down 1-0. So the Flames need a win to stay alive here. But a lot of playoff implications tonight, as crazily enough, heading here towards the end of the season. Like the poll question says, 2 games left. Boys, where did the season go?
I know it goes by in a flash. Between football and baseball season, it's like the quickest time of the year. But I will root for Calgary though. I'm not one to hold grudges. I'd like to see Frosty and Farabee get a little taste of the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm pulling for St. Louis. I got a buddy who works for the organization, so I'm pulling for the Blues, hoping they maintain that spot.
Hey, like I said, they are a good story. So.
Mm-hmm. After they clinch it, though, I don't care what happens after that. I'm just hoping they get in. After that, I have no idea.
I wouldn't, I wouldn't want to play them in the playoffs. I really wouldn't, because Binnington. We've seen Binnington when he's on top of his game and he's not letting stuff get into his head. He can be a big difference maker. Winnipeg better watch out.
No, absolutely. The one team, and me and Priz have talked about this a little bit in our little chat there. And before we get back to this Flyers game here, as we're back with 3:49 remaining in the game, shots 34-28 in favor of Columbus. And there you go. Stars have officially collapsed, not having Miro. Don't like their chances against Colorado. But then again, even before Miro got hurt, after the trade deadline, Colorado became a very scary team again. You add Brock Nelson, you add Charlie Coyle. Essentially, you sign a free agent, and I say finger quotes around that because you get Gabriel Landeskog back for the first time in Lord knows how long. He's gonna be in the lineup shortly if he's not in there by the time their next game starts up, which I don't know if it's tonight or not. But
I've read that they're going to probably hold him out till game 3 because they want him to get some practice team and make sure that he's okay. So I don't know how true that is. NHL rumors seem to be pretty much. Oh
wait, they're done.
The pro hockey rumors, they seem to be pretty on the ball. So.
Well, I mean, that's why they sent him down to the AHL to get that loan going, so he can get him back into skating and playing hockey. So I'd imagine that he's going to be ready to go for game 1, especially since Colorado's done for the year. They've played 82, so he's going to get plenty of time to practice. He's going to have plenty of time to get back into game shape. I know practice is different from being in a natural game. But
he hasn't played in 3 years though. Boy, it's unbelievable that he's able to actually come back and play. I mean, God bless him.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's going to be a spark. He's going to be a massive spark. All right, so we're about 2 minutes 45 seconds with the break here. Still 3-0. Like I said, this was a must win for Columbus. As Greg chimes in, Greggy, what's going on, brother? Says, what's up, fellas? I disagree to the poll. So many changes before next year. Can't take much of these late games. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Greg. There's definitely going to be. I mean, there's going to be changes to the roster for next year as well. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be a lot of outside the organization changes. I think it's going to be a lot of inside. I honestly, depending on how the Flyers finish out tonight and the game against Buffalo on, I believe, Thursday, I do think Shaw's going to get a crack at being the head coach of this team. I mean, just the way he has these guys playing, they're going, it's a similar system they're already familiar with. I think a lot of the changes are going to come from within, and I think we're going to see a lot of guys getting an opportunity in training camp, from bump to bonk to that feels weird to say, from bump to bonk to Barkley. Lachenko's going to probably make the roster next year. Just a lot going on in-house, and there's a lot of good things for this team moving forward.
Plus, remember, how did this team start the season? Pretty sluggishly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what happened at the end of last season? A pretty big collapse, falling out of the playoffs, leaving a bad taste in the mouth. I believe the two are correlated. So while I do agree with Greg that these late games really don't mean much, talking about not against the greatest talent pool either in these games, right? Catching teams on sort of a downswing like the New York Rangers last week. I mean, I still think they could leave a taste in the mouth of the players that will be on this team contributing, right? Especially the younger players like we talked about before, Tyson Foerster, Noah Cates, right? And that could lead to a better start to next season, even albeit probably with different personnel and guys moved up, but still, I think for an organizational level, it's still better to end out on a good note than a bad note.
Absolutely. No, and I totally agree. You end the season on an upswing. That gives a lot of guys within the organization really good thing to come back to. Say, hey, you saw how we ended this year. Let's bring it back next year and let's take the next step. I think having Shaw behind the bench for next year, I think is going to not only intrigue the guys that are on the roster now, I think it's going to intrigue the guys who are going to be battling for roster spots next year as well, because they're going to see how these guys are. They're going to see the camaraderie. They're going to see some of the younger guys and how they developed, and they're going to want to be a part of it. So they're going to push even harder. I mean, they're going to push hard enough because they want to get into the NHL. They want to get that roster spot. But I think that they're going to wind up, wanting to try and crack it even harder. Having a guy to want to play for, players tend to play harder for the guys that are behind the bench that are players' coaches. As Flyers officially lose this one 3-0 to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Columbus keeping their playoff hopes alive, I believe.
Yeah, they're still in it.
No, I know they're still in it. I was just seeing if Montreal was playing tonight.
No, tomorrow. I think they play Carolina.
So it's going to come down to Montreal tomorrow. Montreal is going to need to lose, and Columbus is going to need to win their last game of the year. So
Who's
there's
Columbus
going to be
playing the last game.
I don't know. Montreal's got Carolina that we've already talked about. Columbus has the Islanders at home.
Oh boy, Columbus definitely has a. Then again, we don't really know how Columbus and Montreal are going to react in these, because now we've gone through the nitty gritty. Now this is it. This is for all the marbles.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how both these teams react to this.
I mean, I will say this: I do like the veteran leadership in Columbus versus Montreal. I think Montreal does have some good leaders in their locker room, but I also believe that Columbus has some better leader. Like Sean Monahan has really taken on the leadership role. Alex
Werenski,
Wenberg
too.
or Zach Werenski. Yeah, I for some reason thought Wenberg was still there. There's some good leadership in the locker room. So I think they're going to do a very good job of being able to keep these guys calm, keep these guys cool headed, and treat it just like another game. And you know what else is a good way to do that? Hitting the like and subscribe on everything A2D. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you can get us there. You can get us on YouTube, Facebook, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. We are legitimately everywhere. So hit that like, subscribe. Don't miss anything that we have to offer. Come be a part of the conversation. All right, boys. So with that being said, Flyers are officially 5-2-1 under Bradshaw. I don't necessarily think that tonight was – I don't think tonight was a bad loss. I think it was just a very unlucky loss. Obviously, bounce not going their way.
They didn't get the lucky bounces at all. I mean, Columbus tonight just seemed like a team of destiny. They really did. I mean, you have one that first one, who was it? With the shot from the point on the right side that went in off the post. I think it clanked one. It went in the corner. It went into the corner and off the post, or off the post and into the. He had a little doink that went in. I mean, that's a tough way to start. And it looked like Erison never saw it. The one that beat him on the glove side.
Yeah, no, I don't think a lot of people saw that. I mean, Keats and Sealer tried to block it, but those boys didn't want to get in front of that. That was an absolute laser of a shot.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a great shot.
Robbie, what's your takeaway from tonight?
I mean, I didn't watch much of the game. I'll be honest with you, setting up for the show. But in regard to what I've seen the team kind of finishing the way they started, right? Like putting out like you didn't see any quit, right? From at least the bit of game that I saw tonight. I saw the boys working hard, and this is sort of emblematic of what we've seen over these last 8 games, right? That these guys are really showing that fortitude that's been built this whole season long, right? What this team's been built upon, right? Continuing strong transitional game work, right? And in the end, I like you want to see full 60-minute efforts, and you're talking about a Columbus team, right? That's shooting for the playoffs, and this was a 2-0 game heading late into the third period. So in the end, it sort of works out on all angles for what we're trying to accomplish right now.
No, for sure. I thought that was probably their strongest point of their game, and you brought up a great point there, Robbie, was their transition. I thought they were doing a very good job getting up and down the ice. A couple bounces didn't go their way. Really good shot from the point to make it 1-0. I just so that was definitely their strongest point today.
Right.
That was definitely their strongest point today. Like I said, they just couldn't get the bounces. The goaltender was just on point basically all night.
Right. Jet Greaves, young 24-year-old, getting a shot right now, right? Like, well, that's another good story, too. Played in DFS on a GPP tonight. That's why I was kind of happy about that. I was trying to keep that on the hat, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, there's a lot to be proud of, a lot for this team to hold their head up high with this game. I don't necessarily think that this was a bad loss or a loss that any fan should be upset with, even though they got shut out, which I don't think anybody really expected tonight. But this has
playing against a team that was desperate, all in, trying to make the playoffs. I mean, that's
that's basically what it came down to.
a team that's out there completely spilling their guts. I mean, they were playing a team that's already in a complacent. They weren't playing a complacent team tonight.
Yeah, and they kept with them.
Mhm.
Yeah, they really didn't get outplayed. It was one of those games. It seemed like no matter what the Flyers did, and this is from what I watched, no matter what they did, the puck just wouldn't go in the net. I mean, they were getting plenty of opportunities. I mean, good A+ opportunities, and something weird would happen. They'd come in and they'd miss the net. They missed the net several times. It just seemed like that happened. And then the save on Konechny when he came in on the right side and the goalie was down and he happened to reach up and catch the puck. I mean, I don't know if he saw that or if it was a reflex. I don't know. Again, I don't know how he stopped that, because he went down early. That was like a classic one that was supposed to go over his shoulder, and somehow the guy stopped it.
Yeah, so I mean, I like where this team is heading. I think this year you're getting a very good sample of what to expect for next year, regardless if Bradshaw is a coach or not. You're seeing these guys play. You're seeing these guys keep up, despite the fact that they were eliminated 2 weeks ago. The fact that they're still playing hard, they're still finding something to play for. And yeah, a lot of people don't want to play for pride these days, but everybody wants to play for a draft pick. No, I'd rather see this team play for pride. Give yourself something to build off to going into next year, because you don't know who's going to be back, who's not going to be back. You don't know what this roster is going to look like. I mean, I personally think it's going to look pretty similar to what it looks like this year, but I think you're going to add Lachenko to the mix. Barkley's going to make a chance. I think Bonk's going to get a chance. Emil Andre, who's not played a ton of games, but Emil Andre has looked like he belonged since he came back up permanently.
Problem is, Brian, the best players on the best free agents, I'm talking about like Marner and Besser, they're not centers. I mean, I think Marner is a left wing and Besser is a right wing. Am I correct?
Sounds about right. You might have it backwards, but I mean, you're right. They're both wingers.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're not centers, and really, there's two things that I feel if the Flyers want to make the playoffs next year, okay, they do need to get a couple of veterans, a good veteran center, who can score a little bit, and big, tough, win faceoffs, and a nasty bull on the back line. Dare I say, a guy like maybe Nico Mikkola on the Panthers, he'd be a nice fit for them. I mean, just somebody back there that's gonna kind of send you a message when you go out there. They really need that. They need a little size on the back line, and they definitely need some size, especially down the middle.
I'll agree with down the middle. I think defensively, they're okay as far as. I mean, I wouldn't hate it if they went out and added to the defense, but I mean, right now there is a bit of a logjam back there. Like I said, the only player in the UFA pool that I would go after this year would be Eklund. But in that same breath, you still have York, who's got to get re-signed because he's an RFA at the end of the year. You have Ristolainen, who is really just absolutely revamped his career this year. He's had probably the best season of his entire career.
Does he get traded though?
No, I don't think so. At least not yet.
Because just to me, he's had such a good year. Maybe the Flyers should sell high on this guy. Because if you look at his career, this kind of came out of nowhere. Because he's kind of last couple of years, he's kind of stunk it up a little bit. Had a good year this year. I don't know if it was me. If it was my team, I might want to sell high on this guy. It depends what you're getting, but if you could trade him and get yourself a really good center, it might be worth it, and you might be able to get a good center for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think you do want to try to sell high on Risto.
He played well. He has trade value. You could probably get a pretty good center for him. There are a lot of teams that could use a good right-handed defenseman. It's not like they're really easy to find.
It's a no-lose situation though, because if you don't get what you're aiming for in a trade for Risto, right?
You don't
can
have
easily
to trade him.
You don't have to trade him because you can see this guy further developing his game or continuing this level of play into his mid-30s by the time this team is ready to compete realistically in the playoffs. 34, 35-year-old defensemen, we see them make a big impact in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what?
Absolutely.
My only downfall to
It's not
trading a guy
sooner.
like, if you only downfall I have for trading a guy like, if they don't trade a guy like Gristo or they trade a guy like Gristo, Sanheim's not really the guy I would want to be a leader defensively, because as good as he is offensively, he can be a liability on the blue line. York, again, Drysdale, these guys have offensive minds. There's not really anybody. Sealer's a really good defensive defenseman, but you trade Bristow right now, you lose that.
You need both. If you get both, you can make the playoffs next year.
I don't think they make the playoffs next year. Not with the goaltending tandem they have right now.
Yeah, well, there may be some
changes are coming, but between the pipes,
coming.
I hear.
Yeah, changes are coming.
Yes.
I think that somebody might be going back to Russia if I heard correctly.
What's up, Ant? Goes on to say, all they have to do now is lose Thursday in regulation, and we stay at the 4th pick. Boston just got a point. Hopefully they stay there, and the draft lottery doesn't put them lower.
Yeah, you don't really know. That's the problem.
No, that's why I don't like the idea of tanking and people going, this team has to continue to lose. This team has to continue to lose.
Yeah, but you always see a couple.
You don't want to lose in culture for a young team, though. That's my big takeaway.
You always see a couple of teams go from like 9-2 or 12-2 or 12-3 or something like that. You always see stuff like that.
But my big thing is if they drop because they create a losing culture, I feel like it's harder and it takes a rebuild longer because you have to reteach everybody. It's like, hey, this is how we win. This is how we win. This is how we win. Because I think you create a bad culture when you're sitting there and you're like, all right, boys, let's go out there. Let's not put up much of an effort because we're hunting draft picks. I don't like that.
Brian, I clearly disagree. Tanking has worked so well for the Philadelphia 76ers, right? Fuck tanking.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of it. Like I look how well it looked for Edmonton. They tanked for how many years in a row? What did that get them?
They had 5 first-round picks before they finally got lucky with McDavid.
That was And how many of them are still with the Oilers? 2.
Yeah. What's his name? Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and
McDavid.
And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is a good player, but he's definitely not worth being a first-round pick.
This is a perfect example. I like Taylor Hall. I think he's a fine player, but he never became the player that they thought he was going to be when they drafted him. Right. Neil Yakupov, he's not even in the NHL anymore.
Yeah, he's your classic example.
That's why I don't like tanking. Create a winning culture and go with it. Like that's going to be the best way to get through a rebuild. That's the quickest way.
Look at Lafreniere, first pick in the draft. And this year he completely tailed off. Went from 57 points to 44 points. He scored. Do you know that he has scored as many goals in the last 34 games as Matt Rempe?
Wow.
3 goals.
Yeah, he won
Matt
Rempe,
but good for Matt Rempe. But for God's sakes, you can't be the first pick in the draft and not be able to outscore Matt Rempe. And I love Matt Rempe. Don't get me wrong, but come on, that's just you can't let that happen.
Truth.
Yeah, we all know how I feel about Rempe, but Priz,
he's getting
Corey
better,
Perry's
buddy.
won a Hart. Yeah, we'll see. Blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. Corey Perry won a Hart Trophy too. He also won the league MVP. He's won a scoring title. That doesn't make Corey Perry any better than he actually is. Corey Perry's career really tailed off in the second half. Taylor Hall's better than Corey Perry. Don't get it twisted. But Taylor Hall winning a Hart Trophy doesn't really mean much to me. Yeah, so you guys had a really good segue going, and then we got distracted a little bit. But yeah, we're talking.
Well, we address the fans' needs. They want to talk about it. We can talk about it, right?
No, absolutely. Corey Perry was a problem. Yeah, he was a problem. And so is Taylor Hall. But like I said, Taylor Hall's a good player. He just never lived up to the hype. That's all I'm saying. He never lived up to the hype. Priz goes on to say Perry was better in his prime, was better than Hall in his prime. I don't disagree, but Taylor Hall has been able to be a little bit more consistent than Corey Perry was in his entire career. Corey Perry's scoring talent just went away after his last year in Anaheim, and since then, I don't think he's had more than maybe 10 goals a year. I mean, I'm a Corey Perry fan. I love Corey, but I would take Taylor Hall over Corey Perry any day of the week. All right, so it's one of my least favorite people in Philadelphia media, I believe it was yesterday, Anthony Sanfilippo of Snow the Goalie podcast released a clip from one of their previous shows stating that he believes Alexei Kolosov played his final game as a Philadelphia Flyer and that he will be heading back to Russia next season. My initial thoughts on that were good. We kind of knew that this was going to come at some point. The Flyers were going to have to make a choice. And he wasn't going to go play for the AHL. He already made it clear he wanted to either play in the NHL as a starter or he was going to wind up going back to Russia. So if the report is true, what Anthony Sanfilippo has put out there, if Kolosov does go back to Russia, I think this is the move that makes the most sense for him. What do you got? Robbie, what's your thought process on this?
Well, I mean, this scenario was caused by not dishing a goalie at the deadline, first and foremost. So, I mean, I will hold, Danny and Keith, accountable for that. But you know what? If he heads back to Belarus, and this is indeed the last we see of Kolosov and his sub 885 save percentage, then I say good riddance, Bafangul. I'm sick of hearing this guy demand to be an NHL starting goaltender without proving shit. This goalie pipeline here is deep, and frankly, I prefer the likes of, and I've spoke his praises before, but Carson Bjarnason and his 913 save percentage in 40 starts with the Brandon Wheat Kings of the WHL, which is a very competitive league, really prepares guys for this league. And this was a guy that was a once undrafted goalie, and he turned himself into a second-round selection, which we know goalies don't go as high in the draft, just by making the Brandon team as an undrafted goalie and excelling there for the past 2 to 3 seasons. He's with the Flyers now, right? But I was reading from Jamie Baskow, Flyers Nitty Gritty, that it would be shocking to see if he goes to Lehigh to help them with their playoff run to gain a little, experience on the pro level. I mean, he's dealing with an undisclosed injury, so there's that. So I just think he's getting treatment with the medical staff here and absorbing practice being around the organization. But my point is, boys, is that there's brighter futures ahead. And Kolosov, while albeit didn't get as much of an opportunity to really show a larger sample size, but I'm not tickled by an 885.
Though.
Yeah.
Right. You do.
I mean, he didn't outplay anybody. He wasn't that good.
He got demoted for Fedotov, which, I mean, to his credit, he definitely improved, but this is a guy that's maybe slipped past his prime due to unforeseen circumstances of not being able to get over to the States earlier on in his career, an advantage that Kolosov has and is taking for granted and now threatening twice to want to go back to the KHL. You want to go play in the KHL? Go play in the KHL. Good riddance.
I agree with you.
Whatever Priz said here.
That hold you hostage.
Right.
No, and that's the thing too, is like if you look at his stats, just in the small sample size in the NHL, Alexei Kolosov in 12 starts is 5-8 a 3.56 goals against with an 8.67 save percentage. It's not impressive. It's not impressive. And his numbers in the AHL were not much better. So it's just like, I understand that there's an adjustment period. We saw Ivan Fedotov go through that, and now he's made himself a serviceable backup. With this goaltending tandem, as it is now with the three of them, I mean, somebody's going to get the shaft. And if this kid's out here making demands, ship him out. Do what you did with Cutter.
One time is being, you want to be a go-getter, right? Twice is being a prima donna.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I get it. I mean, just looking into Bjarnason's numbers too. You're talking about a guy who put up a 293 goals against, sub 3 goals against. That's what I was looking for, right? And he's been around the 3 mark, predominantly in his career, right? Also playing for his national team in Sweden, right? And there might be a little connection, with Ersson. I mean, I'm sorry, no, he's from Canada, but there has been a connection in terms of a bond between Ersson and this young goaltender.
Yeah, and the one thing too is, I believe
Team Canada he played for. That's what he did in the juniors, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
Go on.
Oh, good. I believe Bjarnason is reporting to Lehigh. I think that he's going to either help them with the playoff push, or they're just going to let him practice with the team. But I believe he is going to get some playing time with the Phantoms. So I expect him to be in camp next year. I think this could actually kind of help push the Flyers in a direction in the draft that's going to wind up with another Brandon Wheat King here in Roger McQueen. Mm-hmm. But I mean, he's got a big question mark as far as injury and health goes. But I think that next year Flyers will rock 2 goalies, and it will be for Fedotov and it will be Ersson to start the year. Where it goes from there, who knows? I've had conversations with guys who absolutely want to take a goalie in free agency. Nah, I'm good. We've seen that and how that works in Detroit. I'm good. We don't need a band-aid. We don't need a bridge.
A good goalie, though.
I mean, they have a good goalie. They just don't have a good backup, and they just need to let their future goalie take the reins. Heather, York is going to resign. He's been playing really well the last few games. Brinkman chiming in saying that he wants a new face. I believe there's a Step Brothers quote in there somewhere, and I'm just going to leave that one alone. Where would you like the new face, Brink?
Right. We do know Sam was Tort's boy too, so I mean maybe they do try to move him and solve the log jam in the offseason too. I mean that's on the table that to buck the report by San Filippo out there. Like what if that happens and then you rock the 2 Russian goaltenders coming in, right? Yeah. Or he does go back to Belarus and it gives an opportunity for another Russian goaltender in Zavregan who can step into those shoes as well. So, I like there's a deep pipeline here, boys, and I really feel that they're going to continue to draft at all levels.
I think the only
you got it when as far as goaltending situation, you really have to wait till training camp next year. And training camp, see who stands out. And it may not be the guy you think it is. Listen, Henrik Lundqvist was a 7th-round pick for the Rangers. Okay? And when he came up, nobody expected him to make the team. He was an afterthought. But, in training camp, nobody could score against him. And then in the preseason, he had a real good preseason. And then they started throwing him out there. And, lo and behold, he was really good again. So it can happen. You don't really know.
You don't. But the difference is
goalies are very different creatures. They really are. They can get a little adjustment in their game over the summer with their goaltending coach, and all of a sudden they can take it into training camp, and then they can run with it and become pro goalies and be good.
Yeah, but the
It
difference
happens
is,
like that.
these I believe Bjarnsson's what, 19 years old. Zavragin's 19, 20 years old. I'm not throwing either one of those guys into the fire yet. Carter Hart didn't come up until he's 21.
Yeah.
Tom
So
Barrasso
these
came
guys
up
still
at
have about
18.
2 years left.
Remember Tom Barrasso?
It's a different league. It's a
They
different
had some
league
pretty
now.
good goal scorers back then.
Yeah, but it's a different league. It's a very different game it was from when Tom Barrasso played.
But to your point before, I could see Bjarnason developing with the Phantoms while you rock, Arison and Fedutov at the pro level, and then Bjarnsson's ready by the time, 2-3 years in terms of the target, deadline for this team to be playoff, not just making the playoffs, squeaking into the playoffs, but being playoff relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's the key here, boys. That's going to be the key for the Flyers moving forward is how are they going to be able to get themselves playoff relevant? Do they go after a goalie in the offseason? I don't think they do. I'm just throwing this out there. Do they go after another defenseman? They have to address the center position. How they do it is going to be a whole nother story. That's going to be the question. Is how do they do it? Who are they going to bring in? Where they're going to get them from? Brad might be spot on here and saying that they're going to trade somebody. Honestly, I think that might be one of the better only ways to really get there. What's up, Pete?
The only way they're going to get a good center is if they trade with a team that's loaded with centers, and they're willing to give up a guy like a guy like Ristolainen. I'm thinking of Rayo Ristolainen now.
I thought you were talking about the defenseman on Pittsburgh.
If the deal's right, absolutely. I got no issue dealing Risto if the deal is right, but I'm not going to trade him just to trade him.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he's a guy that has significant trade value. Everybody is looking for a good right-handed defenseman. I think that's the only way you're going to get a really good center is to trade him because he's a team that needs a good defenseman, like say Toronto. I don't know that Toronto has enough centers that you guys would be able to get, that would be tradable right now. But that's the kind of guy you could move to a team that might need a defenseman. Like the Kings too. They're a team that they're kind of loaded with good young centers.
Byfield's the only one that comes to mind for me, and they're not trading Byfield.
No,
they'd be stupid too.
No, that wouldn't work.
No, the guys.
I'm just using examples. I don't know enough about some of these other teams outside of our division, to be honest with you, that you could go out and get.
Oh no, he plays right wing.
A specific center.
LaFerriere.
Yeah, I was thinking LaFerriere.
Yeah,
I was kind of thinking about him too. I like him too, but that's the kind of thing that they could. That's the kind of player that you could. I mean, maybe they could trade him. Well, you probably don't want to trade him for Rossi because you want a bigger center, right?
Yeah, I mean Rossi would be a great talent to have, and he's a top 6 center, but you got to get a bigger body in there. Got to get a younger, bigger body, I should say.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you.
Yeah, they do have plenty of young centers, but I doubt they're going to trade any of them. Most of them are versatile too.
They're not ready to make a trade like that, Anaheim.
I think they made one 2 years ago.
Huh?
Well, technically last year. No, it was 2 years ago. They made one 2 years ago.
Well, they got Trouba, so I mean, and they got Gudis, so.
No, Gudis signed as a free agent.
Well, no,
but the good young centers that Anaheim have are going to be. They're all centerpieces. The only one that I could see that possibly gets traded is Zegras, but again, Zegras isn't a big kid. He's not a big kid, but he will definitely be a solution to the Flyers and creating having an NHL ready, very talented young winger who can also play center. But he's not a big body at all. As always, appreciate you chiming in, Morris. We'd love to see you in the chat more. Boys, we got about 15 seconds left here. Any final words?
Yeah, I want to highlight what we were talking about pre-show. Shout out to Priz for providing this information from BNR Open Ice on Instagram. But this is the first time in NHL history that the Bruins, Penguins, Rangers, and we'll throw in Detroit, as Priz points out, have all been on the outside looking in with the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. That's bull. I mean, you're talking about a lot, since the late 60s, right, Brad?
68.
68. So, I mean, that's pretty huge. I think that's a little bit of solace for us Flyers fans. The only cherry on top would be if the Devils were on the outside looking in too, but you can't have it all.
Well, at least the Islanders are.
Yeah, Islanders are. Yeah, true.
And no matter how bad the Rangers were this year, they still destroyed the Islanders 4 times. They outscored them 21-5 in 4 games. So we may stink, but they stink more. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, fellas. On that note, we're going to wrap it up here. As always, we are brought to you by Specialized Physical Therapy. Check them out if you have any aches, pains bothering you, post-surgery, you need physical therapy, anything like that. Head over to SPT. Go see Dr. Paul Vidal. His team is great over there in Burlington and also Cherry Hill. These guys are the best. He's our doc. Make him yours. Next time we're on the air, boys, we're going to have the NHL playoffs going as they get underway on the 19th of April, which is only 4 days away, which feels like it's really quick, but what are you going to do?
It's Saturday, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's something to watch on Saturday. Good.
Yep, about time, right? Meanwhile, Flyers' next telecast is on the road in Buffalo against the Sabres on Thursday, so check that out as well. As always, Dale.
I guarantee you they will not get shut out that game.
Pove, Brad. Check us out next week. Same time, Tuesday, 9 o'clock. We are Flyers A2D, and we out.